G'day guys, it's Stux from the TrueNAS forums. It's now been about 4 months since I released my Setting Up Sandboxes with Jailmaker video, and now that TrueNAS Electric Eel is due in beta soon, I thought it would be a good opportunity to show you how to migrate your Docker stacks out of a sandbox and into the Dockge app on TrueNAS Electric Eel. So once everyone began switching from using Kubernetes applications to Docker in a sandbox, people found that the amount of CPU usage required by their applications was vastly lower, and this led to significantly reduced power usage on their TrueNAS boxes. About a month after I released the video, IX Systems announced a major change to the way applications will work in the next version of TrueNAS, which is called Electric Eel. The big change is that they'll replace the Kubernetes app layer with a layer based on Docker and Docker Compose. This means that we won't have to use a sandbox in order to run Docker Compose, and instead we will be able to run Dockge or Docker Compose applications directly on TrueNAS. Now, shortly after this announcement, TrueCharts, a third-party supplier of Helm charts for TrueNAS, announced the deprecation of their charts catalog. This means that if you want to use any of these charts which were available in the TrueCharts catalog, then you probably have to implement them using Docker Compose, like I demonstrated in my original video. In today's video, I want to demonstrate how you can migrate from your Docker sandbox to running your Docker applications directly on TrueNAS. To demonstrate this, I have a small VM running the Electric Eel August 16th nightly, which is the first version which properly supports the Dockge application. Hopefully within a week or two, the Electric Eel beta should be out, and you'll be able to test that version yourself. Now, if we look at the datasets, you can see the datasets that I describe in my sandboxes video. We have a Docker dataset, where I then have data dataset, which contains all of the application-specific data. In this case, Jellyfin, which has the config and transcodes, a stacks dataset, which contains the actual stacks that Dockge manages, and then there is the Jailmaker dataset, which has the jails, in this case Docker, and my media dataset. Now, if you were setting up this from scratch, I would suggest you no longer need the actual dataset, and your application data can actually be hosted directly in the Docker dataset. So before we install the Dockge app in TrueNAS, what we want to do is add a Dockge dataset. So select the Docker dataset that we already have, add dataset, call it Dockge, make sure it's generic, and choose save. There's our Dockge dataset, there's the stacks. We then go to apps, we can go to settings, we check the train settings, and make sure the community train is ticked. This is where the Dockge application is available. Our app service is not configured, so we'll choose a pool, and we'll choose our main pool, and choose that, and this will set up the whole application system on Electric Eel. Once that's done, we can choose Discover Apps, where we can see all the apps that are available currently, but we'll just search for Dockge. There it is, and then we can choose Install. Dockge, the latest version. We can update the WebUI port if we want to 5001, which is the normal Dockge port, although it doesn't really matter. Now, the important thing is the Dockge stacks storage setting, which has to be host path. And then what we do is we select our stacks directory that we were using in our jail. There it is. Then we need to select the Docker data storage. You can use an IX volume, which is basically a sort of internally created and managed volume by TrueNAS, but this causes bugs in the current build. And if you do select a host path, you can then select that Dockge dataset we made, and then you will be in control of your data. There it is. There's nothing else to do. 2 CPUs is more than fine, and we just install it. This will now pull down the images from Docker Hub, create and spin up a Dockge application, just like when we wrote the script in the sandbox tutorial. We can see that Dockge is now deploying. Now that it's running, we can click this WebUI button, and that will take us directly to the Dockge WebUI. There it is. Because we've never logged in, we do need to set a password. And here we have Dockge running on TrueNAS. You can actually see that Dockge can see itself, which is the IX application Dockge. We can also see our Jellyfin application and our Nginx Hello World application, which are already running on another instance of Dockge. What I can do is I can show you that other instance, which is at 5001. And here you can see Jellyfin and Nginx. If I were to click on the 8096 port, we can see that my Jellyfin installation is working just fine. Close that. Now, what I can do is I can just stop this application here, choose Nginx, stop, it's exited, it's stopped. We can go back to the TrueNAS Dockage, and I can run Nginx here, and I can just press start. And now it will download the Nginx containers into TrueNAS, and it will set up the Nginx container. And now Nginx is running in Dockage on TrueNAS, and I can do 8080 to go straight to the Nginx, and this is running on the TrueNAS IP rather than the Dockage IP. Now, you don't really want to have the same application running in both Dockages necessarily because they are using the same backing store on your TrueNAS. Now, I can get rid of the 35 and I can show you Jellyfin here. Jellyfin is currently running in the other Dockage, and because they are using the same data on the pool, we don't really want them running simultaneously. Now, I will show you a neat little trick that you can do in Dockage. So if we go to the Dockage home, we can add agent, and I can then type in the IP address for the other Dockage install and the username and the password. And we have now added the jail-based Dockage as an agent for the primary Dockage, which is installed on the TrueNAS. And I can now see that I've got the exited Nginx hello running on the jail, and I have it running on the TrueNAS. And I have the Jellyfin running in the jail, and I have the Jellyfin inactive on the TrueNAS. So if I were to go to this Nginx hello here, I can do start, and that's now running on the jail and on the TrueNAS. If I click on this 8080, it will bring up the Nginx on the jail, which is IP35. And if I go back to my Dockage thing here and I click on Nginx current, which is the TrueNAS instance of Dockage, and I click 8080, it will take us to Nginx running on the TrueNAS IP34. I'll close those down now. So what this means is we can now stop the Nginx hello and inactivate it. And we can also stop the Jellyfin instance on the jail, stop and inactive. And that actually removed the containers and erased them. And now we can go to Jellyfin on our TrueNAS installation and we can update the paths. We need to update the paths because we didn't actually mount the Jellyfin dataset in the jail at the same location as it is on the TrueNAS. So if we go back to TrueNAS, we go to Datasets, we can look in the data directory here, we can click on Jellyfin, and we can click on this copy to clipboard here, and that'll copy the full path. And then here, we want to edit our compose YAML, and basically where it says data and Jellyfin, we want to paste the actual path to the Jellyfin dataset, which means that this will now say mount dozer docker data Jellyfin config, and that goes to config, and we have to do the same thing to the Jellyfin transcodes. So this is the full path to the transcodes dataset on our pool, and then we have the media here, and the main thing is here we want to include the pool name. So this path here is our path to our media on our TrueNAS. This is our path to Jellyfin, the Jellyfin config, and this is our path to Jellyfin transcodes. Once we've done that, we can save the changes and we can start Jellyfin on our TrueNAS installation. This will have to pull down the Jellyfin images. Now that it's finished that, Jellyfin should be up and running on our TrueNAS installation. And once I sign in, you'll see that it is the same Jellyfin configuration, just on a different IP address. Once you've finished migrating your compose stacks from Dockage in your jail, if you have no more use for that jail, you can delete the jail. You can delete the Dockge agent. So to delete the agent from Dockage, you just click the delete there, and that will remove the agent. That doesn't remove the jail. And to remove the jail itself, you could go to your shell. If we do Jailmaker list, then you would see that we have a Docker instance running there, and we can just do Jailmaker remove Docker, and that will remove Docker. It's done. Now, if you wanted to, you could delete your Jailmaker dataset entirely now, if you no longer need Jailmaker. Jailmaker is still pretty useful and it works perfectly on Electric Eel, so that's completely up to you. But if you did want to delete it, you could just delete the dataset. Once you've deleted the dataset, don't forget that you need to actually change the init shutdown script. And now we've fully replaced Dockage in a jail with Dockage on TrueNAS. So here we have Dockage. We can press stop. That won't actually stop Jellyfin because it's just stopping Dockage, which is the management interface. but Dockge is stopped. We go back to TrueNAS, we press start, it will redeploy, and once it's running again, Dockge is back. With Dockge, you can press compose to add any composition you like. You can change the ports, 8082, change the name, Nginx2, and then just deploy. And here we have another instance of Nginx. If you had a Docker run command, you could just paste it in here or type it in here and convert it to compose, and then you should just be able to run it. There we are, the Docker Hello World. Hello from Docker. Just as per usual, you can delete these anytime you want, and they will delete off your TrueNAS. Now, one of the things when I explained how to set up Docker and the datasets, I suggested using a dataset to contain all the data for your Docker installations. Now I think it makes more sense to move these datasets into the parent Docker container. And there's a good way of doing that. So firstly, we go to Dockge and we stop the Jellyfin service. Then we can go to our shell. Here we are. And then what we want to do is sudo zfs list to get a list of all the datasets. We'll grep that for Docker. Then we can see our Jellyfin dataset is called dozer docker data Jellyfin. What we do now is sudo zfs rename the name of our dataset and what we would like it to be, which is one level deeper. Now that that's finished, we can actually relist the datasets. And you'll see we've now moved Jellyfin one level deeper. So if we go look at our datasets, you will see that Docker, Dockge, Jellyfin, and stacks. Now we can actually delete our dataset since there's nothing else in it. And remember, you may have folders and directories in that dataset. So be very certain that your dataset is empty before you delete it. Now we can go back to Dockge, and what we can do is edit the compose, remove the data layer, save it, and restart it. Now, there's already quite a few applications available directly from the TrueNAS user interface, and these are very simple to configure, but you have the full capacity to use Compose right now using the Dockge application, or if you prefer, you can use Portainer. But as mentioned in my previous video, I prefer Dockge because it allows you to have the stacks on your pool in a transparent format, which you can easily move and migrate to other systems. The Electric Eel beta should be available soon. And if you like living adventurously, you may want to give it a go. But if not, and you still want to play with Docker Compose, then you can safely use Jailmaker and Sandboxes in Dragonfish until you decide to upgrade to Electric Eel. Remember, if you install a nightly, you may need to manually install a future release and then upload your config to that to get off the nightly train. If you've enjoyed this video and you like this sort of content, then please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again next time.